going on, everybody? I'm back with another YouTube video. Now in today's video, guys, I'm going to be doing once again another re-ranking on all the Diary of the Wimpy Kid books, because they have released a new book which isn't Diary of the Wimpy Kid. It's actually Diary of an Awesome Friendly Kid. So that will be also added to this, since it was made by Kinney as well, and it technically is a part of the series. I'm going to still be putting this in there. So obviously some of my opinions have changed on the books now that they have added a new book. I know my camera might be a little bit tilted, but hopefully you can see me because the camera's pretty far. So this is going to be my re-ranking, and my first ranking on the not the Goosebumps, but the Diary of the Wimpy Kid books was amazing. I got a whole bunch of views on that, and I think it was when the 12th book was out, and it was so close to when the Meltdown came out. But now that they have Diary of an Awesome Friendly Kid, I'm going to be adding it to here. And usually they add the Diary of the Wimpy Kid books about each fall, I think. But this time they added it, I think, somewhere in May. Today is May 31st, so I don't know really. I'm not exactly sure what the release date was. But yes, of course, I'm going to have some mixed opinions. And don't get mad if your favorite book is like on the least popular for me. My ranking will be from worst to best, and this will be the re-ranking, hopefully the final re-ranking, because I have done 3 Diary of the Wimpy Kid worst to best. And I've kept all of them up if you want to still see them. So let's begin from my least favorite to the most favorite. And I won't be uploading videos for probably another week. So this is the last upload I'm going to upload, and then a week later I will hopefully upload something else. The least favorite for me was The Ugly Truth. I don't know why, but I just never really remember the good moments in this book. Usually the books I didn't like, I don't really remember some of the stuff about it. So if you would like to tell me a little bit about what was in this book. It looks like it's okay. Greg Heffley has always been in a hurry to grow up, but it's getting older, really all it's cracked up to be. Greg suddenly finds himself dealing with the pressure of boy-girl parties, increased responsibilities, and even the awkward changes that come with getting older. The thing is, like, I never know the order of the Diary of the Wimpy Kid books. And if he's just getting older now, it just feels like this should have been the first book. But obviously the original one told a whole lot about Greg and his biography. And then the other ones showed like big moments in his middle school life. But I just never remember the good moments in this. And now that I read the back and I remember, it's kind of like, well, why didn't they do this on the first or second book? Now to say. And this is the only paperback book that I have for Diary of the Wimpy Kid. I already had this book, so it's really old. It's the paperback version, but still pretty good condition. And then all the rest are hardbacks. So the next one on my list is Old School. Once again, I don't really remember the ones I didn't like, and Old School had a couple good moments for me, like the lemonade stand and things like that. But it says, life was better in the old days, or was it? That's the question. Greg Heffley is asking as his town voluntarily unplugs and goes electronics free. So this was the one where they unplugged all the electronics and stuff. And now he's like, making lemonade stand, trying to make money and all that. But I just never remember the really good moments. And I know a lot of people liked Old School, but for me, it just wasn't the most enjoyable book. Next up is Hard Luck, and I do remember some good moments in this where they imagine the future and stuff like that. Let me read the back so I can kind of get a memory. Greg Heffley, I haven't read these for a while, so yeah. Greg Heffley's on a losing streak. His best friend, Rowley Jefferson, has ditched him, and finding new friends in middle school and proving to be a tough task. To change his fortunes, Greg decides to take a leap of faith and turn his decisions over to chance. Will a roll of the dice turn things around, or is Greg's life destined to be just another hard luck story? Didn't they do that? I know they did this in the Diary of the Wimpy Kid, the first movie, where his friend doesn't like him and then he goes to another friend. So I don't know. Some of these books just feel really out of place because, especially this one, where I know that Raleigh Jefferson wasn't going to be friends with him anymore on the very first movie. So, I mean, I just don't really get why some of these were placed like this. But Hard Luck had a couple of more moments, I thought, than a couple of the other books before it. But I still don't remember a lot about some of these books. Next up for me is Double Down. Now, Double Down was definitely a lot better than Hard Luck, and yes, this had some great moments, especially at the end when he films Raleigh Jefferson and all that. I just really enjoyed this book, and I couldn't stop reading it. But it just wasn't good enough to beat the ones ahead of it. And it was pretty good. I'd give it about a 3 out of 5 if I was to rate this. It's okay, but the other ones are just a little bit better. So it says the pressure's really piling up on Greg Heffley. His mom thinks video games are turning his brain to mush, so she wants her son to put down the controller and explore his creative side. As if that's not scary enough, Halloween is just around the corner, and the frights are coming at Greg from every angle. When he discovers a bag of gummy worms, it sparks an idea. Can Greg get his mom off his back by making a movie, or will he become rich and famous in the process, or will doubling down on his plan just double Greg's troubles? So yeah, this is the one where they make that film to try to convince his mom that video games aren't bad and things like that, and it was like around Halloween. I really, really liked this, but the idea just wasn't as good as some of the other books ahead of it. Next up for me is Cabin Fever. I loved that this one was around Christmas, and the meltdown was it was around Christmas, but it didn't talk about any Christmassy topics, and I'll get on to that later. But Cabin Fever, when I didn't have this, I had to keep going to the library and renewing this book because I was a little bit behind on reading this. I liked Cabin Fever, and I loved that it was around Christmas, so I thought it was a pretty good idea that they brought a Christmas book finally to the series. So let's read the back of this one. Greg Heffley is in big trouble. School property has been damaged, and Greg is the prime suspect. But the crazy thing is, he's innocent, or at least sort of. The authorities are closing in, but when a surprise blizzard hits, the Heffley family is trapped indoors. Greg knows that when the snow melts, he's going to have to face the music. But could any punishment be worse than being stuck inside with your family for the holidays? So yeah, Cabin Fever, it makes sense. Cabin Fever, they get stuck indoors on these holiday weekends, and he was kind of planning to, I guess, do some better things for the holiday. And I thought this was pretty good that they did this around Christmas, and there's a big blizzard that gets in the way, so it was pretty good. This one may surprise some of you, and that is the new book, Diary of an Awesome Friendly Kid, as you can see. So I'm going to talk a lot about this book in this worst to best ranking. So now that this has just came out, it's supposed to be a diary or a biography of Greg written by Raleigh Jefferson's personality. And when I first heard of this, I was like, really, Jeff Kinney? And I thought, this is obviously a filler. And it was pretty good. Don't get me wrong. I liked this book, and it was better than some of the ones behind it. But when I just found out what it was mainly supposed to be about, I thought Jeff Kinney is totally just trying to add in a new book just to fill it up. And I was really, really disappointed. I wanted to see some of Raleigh's personality, Raleigh's life, things that he has done that doesn't involve Greg. Greg has already talked about almost every topic you can think of with Raleigh. And, I love that the new moments that they added in the book, but I thought it was a big letdown. And I felt like Jeff Kinney just added this book in to kind of fill it in. And, I mean, the cover, I know it's pretty good. It's got some funny, this book is probably one of the funniest and cheesiest out of all of them. And you really get to see, the Greg and Raleigh versus each other. But it's like, I really wanted, when I first saw this book, I really wanted to see it as kind of a diary of Raleigh. And that's what it says, Diary of an Awesome Friendly Kid. But it's supposed to be a biography of Greg. And I thought this was kind of stupid that Jeff Kinney would do this. And don't get me wrong, it had some great moments, a lot better than the other books behind it. but I just thought that it was kind of like a filler book that Jeff Kinney just tried to add in, and I thought he could take so much more time into this book. Obviously, this book came out a little bit earlier than most of the other books did, and I wish he just would have took a lot more time to do this book. And I thought, I was so excited that they were going to add a book like this, and then I figure out what it's about, and it's like, and, you can obviously just see by reading it that it wasn't taken time to put effort in. And, it was a big letdown for me. Obviously, it had some good moments. I mean, you get to learn a little bit more about Raleigh's personality. His writing is definitely a lot different. And it's what I love about this book is the writing is a lot more childish, and that's what Raleigh is. But, I mean, I really didn't want to see Greg. I just wanted to see Raleigh's, personality with his family and what he would do with his family and what he thinks about his family. Of course, he's the only child, but, I mean, they could have added a lot better than just this in it. And it wasn't like the other books. It didn't have the dates and anything. It was just like, oh, one time me and Greg did this. Oh, one time me and Greg did that. I just thought Jeff Kinney could have done a lot better in this book than he did. So for the next, for me, is Diary of the Wimpy Kid, The Last Straw. And I also have a lot to say about this book because in one of my rankings, a lot of people were telling me that The Last Straw did have parts of Dog Days in it. And that's why I ranked this a little bit higher because I really love Dog Days. And yes, I did realize that they did add parts of Dog Days into The Last Straw. I was kind of dumb at the moment, and I know a lot of people were commenting to me on my one video about that. So yes, I definitely think Last Straw had some great moments in it because of the Dog Days and everything. And yeah, it just had some really great moments. It was a great third book. And let's read the back. It says, "Let's face it, Greg Heffley will never change his wimpy ways. Somebody just needs to explain that to Greg's father. You see, Frank Heffley actually thinks he can get his son to toughen up, and he enlists Greg in organized sports and other manly endeavors. Of course, Greg is easily able to sidestep his father's efforts to change him, but when Greg's dad threatens to send him to military academy, Greg realizes he has to shape up or get shipped out." So yes, obviously by reading the back, if you've read and you've watched the Dog Days movie, you will know that this does have parts of Dog Days in it. I think The Last Straw more has parts where his dad kind of wants him to do, outdoorsy stuff. So yeah, this was definitely a great book to the series. A little bit better than that, in my opinion, The Third Wheel. I really liked The Third Wheel. And this was because it had the Valentine's dance in it. And I thought this was great because, kids these days are always looking for a date. They always, oh, that's a pretty girl, that like that. And I thought this was great that they added something like this. And I love when the books always show something that, a kid is actually, where they think that's what a kid likes these days, but they really don't. But I still thought this was a great book. Because of the whole Valentine's, it was around Valentine's Day, and you had a lot of girlsy stuff in it, and things like that. So that's why I really liked The Third Wheel. It's a pretty good book. I just really liked that it was around Valentine's Day, and they had the Valentine's dance, and he's a wimpy kid, so he's when he's going up to a girl, he's probably gonna fail to get that girl to go on a date. So it was a great book in my opinion. Next up for me is The Long Haul. Movie, not so good. Book, really great. Now, this is because they didn't need new actors for this, because they can just always use the same people. I really liked The Long Haul, and I thought the movie was too much like the book. The book was just great as it was, but the movie was just so much like the book that it was almost uncomfortable for me, because I really wanted the book to be a lot different from the movie. And I really liked this. It was really good, and what made it better was obviously the actors weren't bad, and it did have some different parts in it. I don't think it had the Beardo guy in it, but it was still great, and the Beardos are just weirdos. But great book. Long road trips. Obviously, there's lots of movies about these, but putting it into a book, it just made it a whole lot better. So for this long road trip book, it just made a great addition to the Diary of the Wimpy Kid series. Next up for me is Roderick Rules. I really liked Roderick Rules because it showed how Greg and his brother could get along. And it was basically, the whole point of the book was to show that how they could get along with each other and, you know, support their differences. And the movie was excellent. So was the book. And the book, of course, had some different moments in it. And I really liked Roderick Rules because it showed, I mean, the main idea of the story was really great. So for me, Roderick Rules is right here. Next up, the original Diary of the Wimpy Kid. Now I know a lot of you are going to hate on me because I put the original Diary of the Wimpy Kid here. Obviously, the movie was great, the book was great, and the book even added some new things in it. And I thought the long haul was kind of down from the list because it didn't have those different moments like the movie did. And I really liked the original Diary of the Wimpy Kid. It really talked a lot about Greg and introducing Greg and what his wimpy personality is like. So obviously the original is quite up on the list. But even better than that, an even better moment for me is the meltdown. And even if they didn't add any Christmassy things in this and it was around winter time, I thought this was perfect. It was a great book. So basically they had where Greg lived, he has the North Surrey kids and the South Street Surrey kids. So Greg is on the top of the hill, the other kids are on the bottom, and they're kind of having fights with each other of who should own which part of it, and they're basically having a huge snowball fight in the winter. And oh my god, this book probably had the best moments out of any other book, but it's not the best book. I just thought it had the best moments, and it had a great main idea. I thought this was a really great book when I read it. Next up for me is The Getaway. Family vacation, summer vacation, obviously that's awesome. But in Dog Days, they didn't do this. This was basically just a vacation to get away from the wintry places. And they went onto an island. I forgot what it was called. But it was an island getaway. And what I loved about this book, it was like family failure. What I mean by family failure is like, you know, the family's having some really bad moments and they're trying to have a good time, but they just can't. And then at the end of the book, you know, they're really like, you know, some vacations don't go right and you got to have the bad days. And that was kind of like Long Haul. But I thought this one was just so much better with those, you know, you just got to have those bad boys and bad days. And it was kind of like Alexander, the terrible, horrible, very bad day. It was kind of like that. I kind of had the main idea where, you know, not everything's going to be perfect when you go on a vacation. But I thought this was great. And, you know, Greg obviously didn't want to go on a vacation. He wanted to play video games. So I thought The Getaway was really great. And number one, and probably as always, number one for me, Dog Days. I thought Dog Days was just the perfect book. And I loved that it was put in the summer. And I love that, you know, Greg wanted to play video games, but, you know, it was all ruined because obviously his parents wanted him to be outdoors, and it just had some great moments. I mean, the movie was awesome. I watched the movie not too long ago, actually. Read this book if you haven't. It is great. I love Dog Days, and I will always love Dog Days. So what do you think about my ranking? There are now 14 books in the Diary of the Wimpy Kid series, and you can also include Diary of an Awesome Friendly Kid. So what do you think about my re-ranking? I will see you in hopefully about a week, maybe a week and a half if I don't catch on. And I'm hoping to get some new Goosebumps books for Goosebumps Presents. So when I come back, I'll think about ordering some books for my Goosebumps Presents collection, and maybe sometime also the Give Yourself Goosebumps collection, and I will show those in some of my videos. I might do a gameplay sometime. I'm not going to do any more PUBG gameplays, I don't think. I'm not really a huge fan of PUBG anymore. We might do some F-13 gameplays, though. But we'll see in the future, and even some Fallout 4 builds if we get onto that. So, like and subscribe, guys. What do you think about my ranking? Post your opinion in the comments, and I will see you next time.